Welcome to the Catholic Cafe, where Catholic truth is served fresh daily. We've made you a reservation in the luxurious corner booth, so come on in and see what's on the menu today. Now, here's your host, Deacon Jeff Drzymski.
Greetings and welcome to the Catholic Cafe. I'm Deacon Jeff, sitting in the luxurious corner booth of the Catholic Cafe, and I've got Ziggy Rodriguez.
That's me.
And Venerable Tom Dorian here.
Hello.
And we are we're gonna stay on this Pope Leo train.
Woo!
Yeah, that we're on.
All aboard!
It's not stopping. It's not stopping.
It's not stopping. It's just.
I've had someone from outside the church ask me every day, a different person every day since he's been installed. You know,
since his inauguration,
they want to talk to me about him.
There's a report. I don't know if this is legit or not, but it's being said that Google results for how to become Catholic have increased by 373% since he became Pope. Now,
wow.
Maybe that's true. There's a lot of stuff that's unsubstantiated on social media and news, so I don't want to just assume that that's true. But if it's true, that's pretty big.
Well, every time there's a new pope, I don't want to diss any of that information, because there really is always a buzz when there's a new pope. I remember when Francis was pope, when he was first named, there was a lot of like, this guy's interesting, and there were a lot of discussions, and they've fixated on every detail, as they have with Pope Leo. Mm-hmm. They've fixated on every detail, and what I love is what comes out of the Vatican now is all this. I mean, every address, every mass he does. They just print every word, and I just am reading it going, this is really fascinating, and so much so that we took a little bollettino from the Vatican press office, the Vatican press office bulletin, which basically published, the Holy See press office published his audience with participants in the Jubilee of the Eastern Churches, which happened back on May the 14th. And it's like he gave an address basically to the Eastern churches, Eastern rites.
Yeah, Eastern Rite Catholic. Yeah, there a lot of folks in the audience might be a little bit confused because we hear terms like Orthodox and Byzantine.
Right. So he was not talking to the Orthodox churches.
Right.
Right. He was talking to the Eastern rites, of which there are, I think by last count, 23 Eastern rites and one Western Latin rite.
Yeah.
That's the Holy Roman Catholic Church as we know it, as most people who listen to this show know it. But then there are 23 Eastern rites, and they're from all over the world and so many very different ones. But they're all, we'll just say, loyal to the Pope or in league with Rome, I guess. Is a way to look at it. And they like to refer to themselves, and we like to refer to them as churches, the Eastern churches, as part of this this one Catholic church.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with the fact that the apostles spread to different places, and and so John was one of the apostles who went out to Greece, and he's associated with the traditions of the Byzantine Rite Church. St. Thomas, the apostle, went to southern India, Kerala, and if you look at the rich history of is it Syro-Malabar Rite? Syro-Malabar Rite, that they actually, their liturgy, they still speak Aramaic, and they trace themselves back to St. Thomas, and of course Aramaic is not a language that is native to Kerala, India. It was something that was brought,
except for in Aramea. Yeah, in Aramea they still speak Aramaic, I'm pretty sure.
But it was brought to them literally by one of the 12 apostles. The apostle that placed his hand in Christ's wound. So I mean, there's rich history here. We're talking about the Eastern Rite churches.
Yeah, exactly. So a bunch of those folks gathered in Rome, right, for a jubilee of the Eastern churches, and the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, addressed them, and it's a short little address, but I wanted to talk about it because it just, these are the words of the Pope, and if he's addressing them, I don't think he's addressing them to the exclusion of the West. Mm-hmm. I think he makes some really interesting points here that help us in the West the Latin Rite Catholics to look and go like, well, maybe we should look at this. I mean, because he draws some, we'll just say comparisons, or at the very least, he helps the East understand how necessary they are to the West. And that should make you go, wait. Why are they necessary to the West, right? And that's what I want to talk about. So I just want to go through this address of the Holy Father, and we'll just kind of focus on a few things here. But I love the way he starts, because he starts with, Christ is risen, he is truly risen, or I've heard it, Christ is risen, he is risen indeed, which is really a very Eastern expression of the resurrection that everyone says at Easter time. So these 23 rites, they love to say this in their various languages, but they love to say Christ is risen, he is truly risen, or he's risen indeed. And so he starts his presentation to them in there, to the Eastern faithful, but then he kind of starts talking about the priceless heritage of the Eastern churches, and again, this is news to some of the West, right? Some of us are so comfortable where we are in our experience of liturgy, spirituality, and we'll call it church, that we don't always stop and think like, oh, that's something they do over there in that church, and it's a little different than mine, or whatever, and we don't usually venture over there. But Pope Leo is asking us to, in a very unifying way, to look at each other, right? To look and smile at each other and say, hello, what are y'all doing? And what are y'all doing? And how can we learn and love from each other? But what he says is, he first starts talking about the fact that there's been a lot of separation and some problems within the Eastern churches because of the lands that they're in, right? They're politically charged, and war and a lot of unrest, we'll say. And he even says many of our Eastern brothers and sisters, including some of you who he's talking to there present in Rome, have been forced to flee their homelands, war, persecution, instability, poverty, and all that stuff. But they risk losing not only their native lands, but also, when they reach the West, their religious identity. And then he goes on to say, as a result, with the passing generations, the priceless heritage of the Eastern churches is being lost.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
That is powerful. He's saying, like, look, you're being kicked out of your lands. And so then when you get out of your lands, you show up in the West or somewhere else, and like your traditions, your spirituality, what made you in a religious sense, is being lost, and that's something that's insufferable. We can't allow that. We don't want that to happen. Now, he starts talking about the churches and talks about them being in the diaspora, right? That the East is sort of like spread out all over the place now. They're not always in their homelands. I mean, some of these places are like Iran and Iraq, right? The Chaldean churches and some of these churches that are they have ancient Christian roots, and yet they're in places that it's not friendly.
And people might hear that term diaspora, like in the news, oftentimes associated with like the Jewish people, because they spread after the destruction of the temple back in 70 AD. They spread, throughout the world, right? But there's a lot of different cultures and ethnicities who are in a state of diaspora, and what we're seeing here is the Eastern Rite churches. A lot of is sort of being pointed to as a diaspora because of the political realities that a lot of these Eastern churches
they're
face.
Spread out everywhere, and they risk. It's like the Jews. Some of them lost the sense of their heritage, but also they didn't speak Hebrew anymore. After several hundred years, you start speaking other languages like Latin or whatever when they moved out from their homelands. So he says here, I asked the dicastery for the Eastern churches to help me to define principles, norms, and guidelines whereby Latin bishops can concretely support Eastern Catholics in the diaspora in their efforts to preserve their living traditions, and thus, by their distinctive witness, to enrich the communities in which they live. So in other words, it's like, hey, help us help you. Help the Latin Rite. And I just think about this, bringing this home to my own parish, where there is some Ruthenian Catholics in our parish that they have different traditions about receiving Holy Communion, like using a spoon for the baby who's already had their first communion. And it's like, and so how can the Latin bishops help those people who are no longer in their original homelands where they have those traditions and they celebrate them as normalcy. They're now in the Latin Rite, and they're making the best that they can. How do we keep that culture alive, right? And I started thinking about that. And when you read that, you go like, well, that's nice. Is that just a nice gesture? I mean, why is he going on about this? And then, like, the next couple of paragraphs, I want to go ahead and just read them. Tells you why we need to care about this. It's more than just making them feel comfortable. It's more than just saying, like, let's make them feel nice about being here out of their element. You know, let's just give them a Hallmark card and a firm handshake and say, welcome to this land or whatever. It's more than that. He's actually saying something profound here. And so I'm going to read just the next paragraph and a half. The church needs you. Okay, he's talking to the East again. The church needs you. The contribution that the Christian East can offer us today is immense. We have great need to recover the sense of mystery that remains alive in your liturgies that engage the human person in his or her entirety, that sing of the beauty of salvation and evoke a sense of wonder at how God's majesty embraces our human frailty. It is likewise important to rediscover, especially in the Christian West, a sense of the primacy of God, the importance of mystagogy, and the values so typical of Eastern spirituality: constant intercession, penance, fasting, and weeping for one's own sins and for those of all humanity. It is vital, then, that you preserve your traditions without attenuating them, for the sake, perhaps, of practicality or convenience, lest they be corrupted by the mentality of consumerism and utilitarianism. Your traditions of spirituality, ancient yet ever new, are medicinal. In them, the drama of human misery is combined with wonder at God's mercy, so that our sinfulness does not lead to despair, but opens us to accepting the gracious gift of becoming creatures who are healed, divinized, and raised to the heights of heaven. Okay, so when I read that, I'd heard some good stuff.
Yeah.
I'd heard some stuff like this, and I'd heard a few reels on Facebook, that shows you some TikTok videos and other things. And I'd seen like Taylor Marshall say something that was like really interesting to me about what Pope Leo said. And I thought, like, I got to read this. Did he say that? And then I'm reading and that little bit I just read to you blew me away, because it's not just saying, hey, nice on you guys. Y'all got some good stuff going on there. Y'all keep it going. He's saying things that, like, the church, and he's talking about the universal church here, West and East, the two lungs, as Pope John Paul II said, that the church needs you, right? Imagine losing one of your lungs. It's a little more difficult, right? And the thing is, the church needs you, but then he goes on to say that your traditions of spirituality, ancient yet ever new, are medicinal.
Yeah. All
right, and then says, and we're talking about their spirituality, which means we're talking about their liturgies, what they believe, how they pray, their experience of God and worship. He's saying it's medicinal, right? And so why is he saying this? Medicine to who?
Yeah.
To themselves or also to the West? And that's what made me think, well, wait a second. What is Pope Leo XIV saying here? Now, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but it does cause me to call into question about the Western liturgies, about the Latin Rite. Are there things that we need medicine for? Are there problems? Are there issues? And I'm not going to proclaim, that your parish doesn't do a beautiful and reverent Novus Ordo. I'm not going to claim. I don't know your parish. I don't know what the experience is. And I know in the hearts of all these priests and the deacons, the clergy at these parishes, there's a beautiful gift there. But Pope Leo is actually expanding this and asking us to consider the East.
Right, and I think also maybe just to give a little history lesson to some of our audience, you'd mentioned like there's rites where a baby might receive the communion on the spoon. Like, these are very ancient practices that go back, like we were saying earlier. These churches' traditions trace back to the Apostles' day, oftentimes, right? And the Vatican II did not extend. Just so we can clarify, that was a reform. There was a lot of reform in the liturgy in the 20th century within the Western Church, but we didn't impose that upon the Eastern churches. There are some Eastern churches who have made decisions here and there to make some reforms, but since that time. But they're generally speaking, if you walk into a Byzantine Rite church or an Eastern Rite church, you're going to see a very different presentation.
An ancient liturgy.
A very ancient liturgy, and it's also could probably be a lot longer, like 2 hours, and beautiful, by the way, beautiful, with different kinds of music, different kinds of chant. They have different kinds of, a lot of Eastern mystics. When I don't mean like
you'll
Buddhist,
hear Aramaic.
Yeah, you'll hear Aramaic
in a lot of them.
When I say Eastern mystics, I mean like from the desert east. I don't mean like
I know.
Like, yeah.
You don't mean the guys that cross their legs on the mountaintop with the incense.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
So there's a lot. There's a rich treasury of goodness that's very unique to these churches.
Now, I have a friend that I used to work with. I haven't seen him in several years, but when I was having a resurgence in my own Catholic faith and kind of rediscovered my Catholicism after kind of wandering away, he was Greek Orthodox. Now, that's not one of these 23 Eastern churches that we're referring to, but there's a lot of similarities in the worship and the style and worship, right? And one of the things he said to me was, hearing me talk about the Catholic Church, he goes, well, what I like about my church is the liturgy's never changed. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. There might be some subtle changes that have been made over the centuries. I don't know that, but a lot of things haven't changed, and I think it's also true for the Eastern churches, right? The Byzantines and all the different flavors of Catholicism, and when I heard that, I'll just say my spiritual immaturity, I saw that as a negative. I'm going like, see, that's the problem. That's the problem with your church. That's the problem with your Greek Orthodox church because you're stuck in the past.
It's not hip and happening.
Yeah, well, it's not willing to bend and flex and to see like the world as it is today. And that all sounds good, and it sounds like it's common sense, and we should think that way. And the reality is, no, that's a problem. And as I spiritually matured and started rediscovering just the Catholic Church, ever ancient, ever new. And I started realizing, no, that's actually a good quality to see yourself as like this ship that is basically rowing through the storm, and the ship itself is not changed. It's just managing the storm, right? Because of its hull is solid and firm, and it's not going anywhere. So there's a tie to tradition that's beautiful. And that's what I think the Pope is asking us to look at. And so this modernization can be problematic, right? And again, remember, Pope Leo XIV, 120 years ago, Pope Leo XIII had a lot of problems with modernism, right? And that was entering into Catholic circles. And so again, it makes me think, and this guy made me think that. Now I haven't talked to him in a long time. I really should look him up and chat with him again. But it made me look at the Catholic Church and start to realize some things. Some things do make a difference. I remember myself and my wife going to Rome for the very first time. And when you go there, it's like the first time I had a sense of the universal church, because there were so many different cultures, languages, skin colors, religious habits, all these different things I'd never seen before. And these just gargantuan, beautiful churches, edifices that had been there, some of them, 1,500, 1,800 years, and seeing some things that were 2,000 years old as our church, and going, okay, there is something about this that's just absolutely transcendent in time, and it's for all times. And that was really powerful to see. And that was really not because I read a book that said that. It's because I saw that. I experienced that with my eyes and then sensed something, which then brought me to modern times and being in a parish that I was assigned at previously, where they had done a renovation, and they'd done a beautiful renovation of their sanctuary area, and they'd put up a baldachin, right, which is an ancient structure like the four pillars over the altar, and with a canopy over the altar. It was beautiful. And I remember walking in while they were renovating, in the process of that renovation, and I wasn't going to that church. I wasn't assigned there. And I remember walking in going like, I think I need to be over here. There's something about that I was drawn to. It was one of the reasons why I went to the pastor and said, hey, are you looking for a deacon? It's not always a good thing to do in that situation, but I was drawn. I was drawn emotionally, spiritually, at a deeper level. And then one other example of that, in that same church, I remember years later, walking through that church, and there was a couple there, newly engaged, and they were looking for a venue. Now, this is not the right thing to do. Couples looking for a venue to have their wedding. They want to have a wedding, and they want it in a beautiful place. And I get that, and there's usually a spiritual immaturity there. It's not about their parish and what happens at their parish. She was drawn to, she wanted to find a good place to have their wedding. Well, they went and looked at this particular church. She walks in and she was like aghast she was in awe of that renovation with the lights were all on and whatever. I happened to be walking behind them and I heard them talking because her mom was there, and she goes, "I don't care what happens, I'm getting married here." That's what she said. Those were her words. And I'm like, that's interesting. And it was in passing, and I just kind of moved on. And as I reflect on things like this, I look and go like, what you do, how you do it, what it looks like, the steps that you do, the process can have a profound spiritual impact. And we need to recognize that. I recognize that.
One thing I'll say about Pope Leo XIV is he's an extraordinarily gifted liturgist. I don't know if people have taken the time to watch that. Sometimes the news is carrying clips from the masses.
I heard his inaugural mass was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
it was.
In my experience, not every priest is particularly gifted as a liturgist. Some are and some aren't. I think it's a real gift that some people have, and I think Pope Leo XIV is someone who has extraordinary gifting as a liturgist, and not just gifting as a liturgist, but also great devotion as a liturgist, where he is the fruit of it, which when I watch him put on a papal mass, there's just a level of gravitas and holiness there to where, I feel like anybody, unless somebody has already made their mind up about the Catholic Church and they just hate the church and no good can come from the church, if you bring them to watch a mass like that's presented with that level of gravitas and holiness, they're going to walk away being moved by the sacredness of that moment, the holiness and the piety of the moment, regardless of whether you're Catholic. There's just something about the beauty of the liturgy that moves the heart.
So, Tom, you sit amongst us here, amongst us with the donuts with the sprinkles on it, and you're someone who you spend a significant amount of worship time in a traditional setting, right? The traditional Latin Mass.
Yep.
I mean, am I just saying words, or
no?
Have you experienced that? Describe your experience.
Oh, it's spectacular. It's exactly what he's talking about. It's exactly with the Eastern block of the church. Same thing. The reverence, all the above. What's cool to me, the whole takeaway for me on this bulletin, and also the Mass, his installation Mass, is he's being a father. If you really look at what he's doing, he's building up this side of the church by not tearing down the other side of the church. He's building both sides up at the same time and raising us up at the same time as well.
Or helping a side that may need to revisit some of the,
exactly,
the difficulty, and saying, look, this is beautiful. And then cause the other side, maybe the other lung, to say,
are we beautiful too?
Yeah, why is that beautiful? And maybe we should look at that and see if that can inform us and help,
raise our game,
just like a dad would do. I love that you bring that up about he's being a dad, because, again, Pope comes from Papa, means father.
Right.
He's our spiritual father. And this is not about papal infallibility. He's not writing an infallible document. This is an address to a bunch of people. And basically, we need to pay attention to the Ten Commandments and honor your father and your mother. And we need to honor our father, honor our dad here. Listen to what he has to say, and not be accused.
Say and do. That's what he did in the installation Mass. He did exactly what he says in this bulletin.
And so you can see that. I need to. I'll have to watch that, because it's everywhere on there. And so that's beautiful. But it just tells me that we can, and I say we, I mean the Universal Church. But specifically, I'm in the West, in the Latin Rite, and I know, having seen and experienced myself, this transcendent beauty that quote unquote takes you somewhere, like worship that takes you somewhere, and it just caused me to question for myself. You can question for yourself if you want, but I just look at it and go do we rush maybe sometimes too much? Have we simplified some things? Are we worried about the schedule and the parking lot? more than we are about that transcendent beauty and that willingness to go deeper into our faith, to take us somewhere, wherever that is, and for however long that needs to be. Do we shudder when we go like, that parish, like they're chanting everything in Latin? Why do they use a dead language? Or do we worry like every time we see like, oh, here comes the incense, it's like this is going to be one of those long masses. and we think we can fall in that. Now, I'm not always preaching to the choir. There are people that or maybe I am. There are people that don't feel that way. And God love you. That is awesome. But I'm going to say, there were times in my life where I felt that way, where like, I don't want there to be a baptism at the Mass. I don't want there to be something that's going to lengthen it. I don't want all the extra bells and whistles.
Mass.
Yeah, I want the simple 20-minute Mass, in and out. It's like, and you have too much of that, and all of a sudden you lose a sense of beauty, just like we're in our own diaspora in the West sometimes. I think we end up going into this place where it's like our culture and our tradition is behind us and the land behind us, and maybe we need to revisit that.
Great point.
Those are profound words, and for some it might be accusatory, and I don't intend it to be that way, because I really am saying all this stuff to myself and to help myself to rediscover the ever-ancient, ever-new church, our liturgies, our spirituality, and see where Pope Leo is kind of leading us in a beautiful way, leading us a little bit to the east, ad orientem, to the east, and say like, look, there's something beautiful here. And we need to not say like, those are those people over there and we aren't like that, and that's not us. So that is us. We're all us. We're all here together, unified. So let's pray for that unity. Pray for Pope Leo. Ask the Blessed Mother to be with us on this journey east. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Ephrem the Syrian, pray for us.
Thanks for listening to the Catholic Cafe. If you'd like to contact Deacon Jeff, send him an email at deaconjeff@thecatholiccafe.com. Visit us on the web at thecatholiccafe.com. You can also find us on iTunes or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Catholic Cafe is brought to you by the Order of Malta Federal Association. Join us again at the Catholic Cafe, serving up salvation one cup of coffee at a time.